Hi, welcome back to Choices. This is the orientation to group. You probably thought you wouldn't have to see me again, but this will be the last time, I promise. This will just be a very quick orientation to group to answer some questions about what to expect and how to be successful in group. So first of all, you've probably been notified that you are expected to show up to a group at a certain day and time. Our groups run once a week for 90 minutes, and the groups are on a rolling basis. So you will likely be joining a group that is already in progress. Each week, they're focused on a certain chapter from the Choices book, which you are already very familiar with. So you'll just join up wherever the group is. Groups are likely to be co-ed, but depending on numbers and where you're at, they may be all male or female. And the focus of the group really is on skill application. So you've spent considerable time reading and watching videos and writing about these skills. Now is a time to actually talk about them in real life and to bring in examples of how you're utilizing these skills in real situations and hear from others about how they are so you can learn from them. You will be asked about your actual application of skills if you are in a relationship. Even if you're not in a relationship, consider other relationships that you are in, co-parenting with your kids, with your coworkers, or most importantly, even just with yourself. How are you taking timeouts and recognizing warning signs in stressful situations and making very conscious and deliberate choices about how you act? All of those are exactly what you will be discussing in this group. You will also have a chance to rehearse some of these skills with your fellow group members. Let's talk about how to be successful in group. Rule number one is show up. Your command has authorized you this use of time to be off of work and focused on treatment. So you are expected by your case manager and your command to be there every week. Of course, there are going to be times when you're underway or on leave or sick or caring for a sick child. All those kinds of excused absences are built into this program. They will not be held against you as long as you communicate with your case manager that you'll be absent and why you'll be absent. The best, most efficient, and effective way to do this is by sending an email to your FAP case manager. So it is documented that you contacted them prior to your absence, let them know so that it is not taken as an unexcused absence, which could lead you down a road you don't want to go. But it is telling your FAP case manager, not the facilitator. The facilitator is not able to excuse your absence. It is your case manager who will let the facilitator know that your absence is excused. Once you're in group, there is an expectation that you participate. And participate can mean lots of different things. It can mean sharing your stories of how you're using these skills as examples. It can be answering questions. It could be responding to somebody else as they're telling their stories, bringing in the work that you did from the class and your historic examples. And if you're like most people, the idea of starting a group doesn't sound particularly thrilling, especially if you're not somebody who necessarily feels comfortable sharing things with other people that you don't know. That is understandable, and I can tell you from running groups for a long time that people come in like that, and it usually doesn't take very long for them to start forming a relationship with people in the group and feeling comfortable. But even if you're not somebody who feels particularly at ease talking with other people in group, I've had plenty of people who have not been particularly outgoing, but I can tell that they are engaged in the conversation, that they're tracking what's going on, they understand the material, and even sometimes for people that don't feel comfortable speaking in group, we've been able to work out things, especially in the beginning, where they can write down their ideas instead of talking about them out loud. That can work as well. So just let your facilitator know if you have any particular concerns about sharing in group, and we can work with that. So some guidelines to keep in mind about privacy. Essentially, what is said in group stays in group. You're going to be hearing a lot of very sensitive information about people and their past and their family. And they want to know, just like you want to know, that what they choose to share in group will stay in group. People are not sharing stories outside of group. If you happen to know somebody from group or meet them in another capacity later, you're not disclosing that you know them from group or any of their information. So they want to feel comfortable, you want to feel comfortable, and the best way we can do that is to maintain privacy in the group. There are some exceptions to privacy, and this is on the part of the facilitator. You've likely been told about the Privacy Act and things that we cannot keep confidential for legal purposes or Navy purposes. Those things include things like child abuse. If that's disclosed, that has to be reported. Domestic violence is part of the Privacy Act, which means domestic violence has to be reported to FAP. The way this works in group, because of course that's kind of the nature of what we're talking about, is your facilitator does not want to disclose any information unless they absolutely have to. So the situation where they would have to is more like recent current domestic violence that's going on. So for example, if somebody shows up to group and they have a black eye and they say that their wife punched them, the facilitator has an obligation to report that to the FAP case manager. I want to add that if somebody is the victim only of domestic violence, they did not retaliate with any physical force, there's not concern about child abuse, if they're just the victim of domestic violence, they can be offered what's called a restricted or confidential report, and that doesn't proceed through the FAP process, that just stays as a confidential report. That's only available if somebody is the victim only of domestic violence, and if law enforcement and the command is not already aware of that. Otherwise, current domestic violence issues are reported to FAP, and then they have to take a look at whether a new case is needed. Other exceptions to privacy include things like substance abuse that has to be reported out, mental health concerns, and that's where there may be a need for a higher level of treatment, like psychiatric treatment. Any risk related to suicide, take that very, very seriously and want to make sure that you understand whether that risk for suicide is for yourself, or if you know of somebody in that situation, that there's help through the Navy immediately available. So one thing you can do is talk to your group facilitator. They hang out after a group, and if you ever want to have a private conversation with them to get immediately connected to those resources, because the Navy has top-rated resources for suicide prevention, that will be done immediately. You can also talk to your FAP case manager. You can talk to somebody in your command. There's really no wrong door for accessing help, and help is immediately available. Again, if that's for you or for somebody that you know, it doesn't matter who you decide to talk to, whoever you feel most comfortable with, but we can immediately get you help and support. Just say the word. Additional things that can't be kept confidential: criminal behavior, threats to national security, that kind of stuff. The last guideline I want to mention is maintaining respect for both group members and the facilitator. You will likely be engaged in some spirited and lively conversations about different topics in your group, and just want to make sure that spirited and lively conversation doesn't cross the line into being disrespectful to your fellow group members or facilitators. If anybody's asked to simmer down, do so immediately, because we want to have those conversations, but also want to make sure that people feel comfortable and safe sharing that kind of stuff and being in group as well. So the last thing I want to touch on is why we do groups. The reason why we do groups is because the research is very, very clear that groups are a highly effective form of treatment. The power of the group supersedes individual treatment. And I think that comes from learning from other people and their experiences, because it's not the facilitator that's going to be teaching you this. Everybody is going to take a turn teaching the material, engaging in the material, learning from others. We know that one of the highest forms of learning is actually being able to teach a skill to somebody else. So you learning from others, but also being able to help and teach others along the way, it really benefits you. And again, it makes it to where when these skills are needed, when something important is on the line, whether that is your relationship or your kids or your career or your freedom, that these skills are going to come back to you like second nature because they are so rehearsed and they are so refined that it's like muscle memory. The way you get that is by practice and rehearsal and talking about it, reading about it, writing about it, all these different forms of learning kind of come together in the group. You also learn from being in group that you are not alone. So whatever the situation was, whether it's how you were raised or what you went through in your relationship or what you're going through now, or even just having this fat case, you are with other people that understand that situation and can offer their support and guidance. So I can tell you from doing groups for a very long time that something very special happens when people come together and have a shared experience. And I look forward to you having that experience as well and continuing to grow from this material and these skills. Best of luck to you and to your family. This is officially the last time you have to look at my kitchen.